Sliding X or BFK anchors. So basically, well, most of you are familiar with highline rigging, or how we rig these days. And over the last few years, we've gone from separate mainline and backup anchors towards master points. So you have 3 or 4, however many bolts that go to one anchor, or that go to one master point where mainline and backup shackle go through. So you can do that with a sliding X or BFK, or you can do quad anchors, whatever you want. But basically sliding X or BFK, that's mainly what people rig with, and they have their advantages and disadvantages. At first, I don't know if everyone's seen it, but we're probably just gonna show you the video of Philip Queen, who did the video talk yesterday on how to tie pretty nice BFK. Just give me a second.
So you start like normal, threading your anchor rope through your bolts or quick links. And then you're going to pull this first end out to a point past your clip edge here, and you're going to leave at least 6 inches of tail. Then you're going to gather the strands of your rope up at that point, from between the bolts. Now here at the last strand is where most people would tie a joining knot between the two ends, like a double sheet end or a double fisher. Instead, we're going to leave this out front, pull the long end through our point and back, and then when we gather our strands and tie a BFK, which can be either an overhand or figure eight. The BFK is going to capture our two ends. And so all we have to do is make sure that both our strands here are captured in the knot, that we're pointing to our other anchor, that we're sharing tension equally between the legs, and that we're just past our clip edge. Hello, my name's Philip, and I'm going to teach you how to tie it.
So I hope you kind of saw or heard. I don't know how good the quality was. That's one way of tying, or a good way of tying a BFK. So, but BFKs are great, but they don't work in many situations. When you have a BFK, when you want to tie BFK, you should have bolts that are on a plane surface and going over a straight edge. Because I'll show you in a sec what happens when your bolts are not in one line. I have a video. And BFKs are really hard, or harder than a sliding X, to equalize all the points in your anchor very well. So if you're rigging with thread gear or stake anchors or shitty bolts, which you shouldn't, then sliding X's are probably more suited. It's really hard to switch between presenting modes. I'll show you the video. Basically, what you see there is a 4-point BFK, and the bolts are in one plane. But now the bolts are varied over the surface, and once you go on a line and, oops, that's a bit fast. Once you walk towards the anchor, the line will lower and the main tension will be on 1 or max 2 bolts on the top. So that's what you want to avoid. And that's when sliding X's are very useful or necessary. So how to tie a sliding X? Most of you are familiar with sliding X's on 2 points. Those are also the videos that you can find online. through climbing and such. But it's really hard to find videos on multi-point anchors or multi-point sliding X's. Yeah, tie, joining knot, whatever you like. Triple fishermen's are my preferred way of doing it. It's easy to check, and you can untie them after a week of a festival. It's like same with 4 or 3 points. What I usually do, I take the middle strands and let's go back. Take the middle strands and twist, give them a half twist, and leave the outer strand as it is. You end up with a nice, clean sliding X. One way, if you're sending over pretty much a whole anchor, is to wrap a span set like I just did, or the rope. Connect all your connectors, and even the quick links that have to go on the other side. This is the 3-point anchor in this case. And then you can send it over with a tagline, and the person receiving it just has to clip it to the anchor and do an extension backup, or backup of the sling itself, to have a redundant anchor and a non-extending anchor. So sliding X's, they should slide. And it's very important that you have enough shackles to do this. Especially with span sets, I wouldn't recommend anything more than a 3-bolt anchor, because then it doesn't equalize in the shackle anymore, because it's just too tight. Then how to check a sliding X. Basically, you go from each bolt, you see that one strand's going from the top through your shackle, one's coming out on the bottom. Top, bottom, just go from just look at each bolt, and that's the way you can check when you get to an anchor if someone else did the sliding X on how it really works. Or you can, when you can push your hand all the way to the bolts, basically, this is super clean anchor. And that's basically what it should do when it's a properly tied sliding X. That's why you have to have a proper sliding X, is that it doesn't slip out. Basically, you just saw it. It's when you have it tied correctly, it catches on the shackle, like so. If you don't tie it correctly, you end up, depending on the bolts, like how many bolts you have, you might end up with a death triangle, or in case of just a 2-point anchor, your whole sliding X is failing and slipping out. So to prevent extension, because extension is bad because of abrasion mostly. When you have movement in your anchor, or quick movement, it's very prone to abrasion. And also, especially with span sets, it's not that much of an issue, but it could also shock load your bolts and your whole anchor, which is not great. So then for 3 points, as we just saw, this would be my preferred method, and what we also done at the THC, at the Turkish Highline Carnival. I had a lead rig there this year. For all 3-point anchors, we did sliding X's with individual extension backups, mostly with rope though, because webbing, as we all know, is prone to abrasion, and in Turkey the rock's pretty sharp. They used to rig with rope there as well for 1 year, but we quickly ditched that, because especially the festival's usually in February, and the weather varies a lot, so it rains a lot and anchors just extend rope, like 80 centimeters or something. So span sets are, in this case, really a lot better. They don't stretch with every bounce and leash fall. So this year we didn't have any span sets that saw any abrasion. We still padded them for sure, but yeah, that's one way of rigging. In the 4-bolt configuration in Turkey, we used my favorite method for 4 bolts is a 2x2 system. Basically have two, as you can see now, sliding X on 2 points on a span set, and then sliding X with the rope on 2 points. You put your master point in that. So what happened? It doesn't matter the configuration. It still works mostly like your load is always on at least 2 points. This method using a rope and a span set, because if you use 2 span sets, you can't adjust to adjust the length. So basically with the rope, you can make it a bit tighter once you rig your line or your anchor. When you pre-tension your line, you can add a bit more tension on your let's stop that for a second. On your rope, so because the rope stretches, and if you adjust for that before you finish rigging your line to make the rope slightly tighter than a span set, they will share the load pretty evenly between the 4 bolts. Not in this configuration that you can see right now. You'll have evenly shared load between the 2 because it's 2 on the bottom, 2 on top. But if you change it to 2 on the side, roughly, it really depends on the bolt pattern there. We'll have a talk about that later as well. But if you do roughly 2x2 side by side, then it equalizes very well between the 4 bolts. And it's a non-extending anchor, so if one bolt would fail, you're still on 2 bolts, and the anchor doesn't extend. It's redundant. Yeah, that's pretty much all you want from your anchor. Yes, a little reminder: span sets for sure on deltas, rope on quick links, and use big stainless steel shackles because they have the best, they slide the best. And I wouldn't recommend soft shackle even on the backup at all because they prevent the sliding axe from moving. So that was roughly it. Are there any questions? So basically, 3-point anchors, I would say sliding X, unless you have a horizontal plane or you're going to an A-frame or have a fixed point, because then you can rig BFKs no matter, like you can equalize it to that one focus point, and then the movement of your line happens in front of it. But for all other situations, I would highly recommend sliding axes.
What about the quad anchors?
If like, they're not very well known, so for festivals I wouldn't recommend them. If people know what they're doing, and then I don't see why not. They all have their pros and cons. Yeah.
Hi, this is Fernando here. Just to add something to the sliding X, if you have the bolt very, very far apart and you're scared that, or even if you don't have bolts, let's say you have cams, what I usually do is extend the cam point with something and make the sliding X small So even if that pops up, the aberration and the movement is very little, because the sliding X at the end is going to have only 20, 30, maybe 40 centimeters. Even that the points are very far apart from each other, like all bolting where the bolts are on a line, on the same line than the line, and you need to use all of them. What I do is just extend the point with a span set, which won't stretch. And then at the end of the span set is your connection point for the sliding X. If that pops out, the sliding X will just move just a little bit, just to add for the sliding X. I don't like the BFK, so I'm pretty happy with the sliding X's.
Hey, Sarah, as well, would you recommend the cascading pattern for multiple, like for trad or stake anchors, as opposed to a sliding X, like, multiple sliding X's?
Well, yes, it does equalize better. It's not way usually rig festivals, so that was mainly on festival anchors. Yeah, and then but with those cascading anchors, you also have to watch out for extension and very much for shock loads, because your single points are usually not as strong.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, sorry, I forgot it was about festival rigging. That's right.
We should have a talk on rigging, competition rigging. Sarah, Naveen asked a while back about reduction in strength from BFKs if one of the legs fails.
Well, it really depends on your bolt configuration. I mean, and where the bolts are, how long your anchor is, how far the bolts are apart. Really, because your anchors, if one leg breaks or one of the outer legs on a BFK breaks, your anchor is going to shift a bit. And whether your anchors be more or less equalized depends really on the bolt pattern there, or on the on how it was tied. So yeah, I mean, definitely there is a reduction in strength. But you just have to evaluate how strong your bolts are, or your points that you're using.
Sarah, Richard shared these Tixora slings. They look like selectivity slings, right? Is it the same thing?
Well, selectivity, I think they make their own slings, but it's similar. Yes, I agree.
I thought the selectivity ones use Dyneema, whereas these other ones look like they use a wire.
They use a wire, really?
I took a look at them. It looks like they are.
I think they sell both a wire core and a textile core one for tree work, potentially for using chainsaws around them.
Okay.
Yeah, there doesn't seem like they seem cool, but they're basically just a slimmer, slightly stronger core version of a span set, And I mean that
But they're also colorful. They look so cute.
Yeah. But I mean, when you've got to use, I mean, at least like Richard says they're cheap in euros, but from the websites I found here in Australia, or at least to buy them in Australia, they're not cheaper than span sets, and there seems to be not much advantage, at least for festival rigging, where you just need, so much gear.
It seems like
perhaps
if you're
weight
relying...
and packed size.
Yeah, like I'd use these over span sets any day when, it's just for personal use. But yeah, for festival rigging, at least.
It seems like if you're relying on span sets equalizing well in your sliding X, then something should be changed, probably.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the span sets are purely there for abrasion, not necessarily for equalization. But the Textura one look like they kind of get both of those.
Get even bigger steel shackles for that.
Ryan Watson asked, is there any concern of textile and textile friction heat between the anchor and backup materials during extension caused by sling, rope, or anchor failure? Well, I don't know of any cases. And also if you have relatively tight, so just that your anchor can equalize well extension backups, then there's not much extension going on anyways. So the singular extension backups with the rope or leftover webbing basically acts as redundancy of your sling in case your sling breaks, or as an extension backup. So if one bolt fails, the extension backup's going to catch your line before the whole anchor extends.
Hey Sarah, Naveen here again. After seeing the, what is that called, Texora, I mean, if you see like a regular span set, is it really, like, don't you think this is too bulky, the covering material, which isn't really load bearing, right? So couldn't, like, ideally or theoretically, couldn't there be like a thinner version of a span set that's equally bomber? Like, don't you think this is like overkill? Sure.
Yeah. I mean, those are pretty much just a thinner version of a normal span set. I mean, Selectivity is selling some, but it's just that the normal span sets are widely available all around the world and easy to get, and that's why we have been using them so far.
No, I mean, what Selectivity is using to me looks like, if I'm not wrong, they look like Dyneema or ultra high molecular weight polyethylene. Like, they look like slings which are covered with threaded with tubular webbing, right? Whereas this is something different, right? And of course, in theory, it's cheaper. I understand. I'm saying more from a. So I mean, sorry. So then, is that what Texora is? Is it just a span set with more lightweight sheath, or is it?
Maybe Richard can talk more about it. I haven't had a good look at them.
Because if that's what it is, then yeah, I mean, I think that pretty much answers my question. Yeah.
Well, basically, the description on their website says this equipment has been made as safety lanyard and anchor sling, which consists of load-bearing yarns as a core and outside tube, which gives the equipment compact shape and protects the core. So I guess it's just like a normal span set, just with a tighter sheath.
They should make them longer. The longest one is 2 meters at the moment. I think how light and thin they are will really kick in if it's 3 or 4 meters.
Yeah.
But I feel like that's such a specific thing to slacklining. I don't know how many other uses that could exist for. It's the same with Rock Empire work slings. They do basically these threaded tubular ones that are 35 kilonewtons, and the longest length available is 150 centimeters. They're pretty cool though for what they are, and mega cheap.
Sarah, there's a question. Would you ever consider span sets as a redundant option since it has such high safety factor? That's a question from Tim.
One span set alone can never be redundant. If that answers the question. Like if it abrades, then your whole anchor is gone, basically, if you use a master point.
Has it happened before that span sets got abraded through?
Yes.
Yes.
Yep.
Sarah, did you get some data about really shock loads with slings? Because we talk a lot about that with Gail, and there is one case in France where one anchor point failed, like on a 3-point. It's a long time ago in a 3-point sliding X with a sling, a span set, a big span set, and with high load, with because it was years ago, and it was really slow with the extension because of the friction, of course. So I don't think there is really like shock load really fast with span set, because
No, I don't think so either.
even with 2, there is so much friction with span set.
Depends on your shackle really and the situation where you're in. But the thing is, it still extends even if it's slow. It's depending on your rock that you have on your anchor. If it's not a free hanging anchor, you still see some abrasion. And I mean, one span set alone for main and backup would still, if the rock falls on it, if it gets cut for some reason, and we know that has happened, it's not a redundant master point anchor. So yeah, that's my 2 cents on it.
Yeah, of course. I was just talking about the fact that it doesn't really matter about the shock load with span set, even if you have a, I don't know, 1 meter extension or 1.5 meters. 2 meters is really long, so it's not really possible to have that with for me.
No, for shock loads, no, but for against abrasion, the extension backups is still, I mean, they double as a redundancy and an extension.
You don't want to have your wall anchors moving.
Yes.
Yeah. And also, you didn't show the trick with the when you have multiple points or even 2 to see if you put your sliding X the right way. I mean,
no, I did. I did. So basically, go up like from one bolt. You hold your shackle.
Yeah. Okay.
You go from the top and the bottom. So that was in the video.
Okay,
well, the video I made just for the record, I did that video like, I don't know, like 1.5 months back, and it was meant for Safety Sunday, but I never finished it. So I guess
it's great.
I hope I'll get it up in a while with actual audio. Or you can just watch the talk now once it's uploaded. But I might make a better version of it. Just rambling.
I had another question.
Yes.
In regards to the master point shackles, there's been a case here in Australia that James walked to the far anchor of one of the lines of the Blue Mountains Festival, and the backup pin had almost completely fallen out because the backup webbing just, flapping around in the breeze slowly undid the pin over the course of a few days. What do you think about that in regards to recommending just regular screw-up pins for festival use, especially for lines?
Yeah, that has happened. We've got a lot of cases. Well, quite a few. I've also seen it on a 360-meter lines in Argentina. I was about to get on, and one person was getting off, and I saw that the pin was just hanging on the last thread, basically. The line was rigged for like a week in the wind. It happens a lot, and on festivals, which I haven't mentioned, thanks for reminding me. At festivals, usually we screw we tighten the shackles and all the quick links with a wrench. The shackles not too much to not break the thread, and then we tape them. The tape is not necessarily there to prevent it from opening, but to see that it has been tightened and that people haven't fucked with it, basically.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, it's unfortunately not very environmentally friendly, but I think it's a good solution for highline festivals to use tape more often. I think it should be more common practice.
Yeah.
But yeah, you wouldn't go as far to say that it's such a big problem that we should be using only, the pin shackles and stuff, or locking oval pinners or something.
Well, at
least for the line.
The pin shackles from like the aluminum shackles. I mean, they're a good option, yes.
Oh yeah, those pin ones. Yeah, I wasn't even thinking about those. I was thinking about the old school, really. Yeah.
There are some slackline shackles that have basically the web lock pins.
Yeah, those ones. Yeah, exactly.
That would work, but they're not cheap.
No.
Yeah, it worked really well. Like when I bought this webbing of Jerry from 2019 Blue Mountains Festival, the main and backup, that's just 2 separate strands. That's main and backup. And they were just taped together at the end. I thought, oh, that looks convenient. And I never took it off. But that kind of seems to mitigate the problem of there's just not much movement in the backup, because this is just one little distance that usually gets clipped to the same master point. That's it. That seems like a nice way to solve it.
Hang on, but if it gets clipped to the same master point, as in both loops go through the same shackle?
Oh, no. Two separate shackles.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
1, 2, and then they get clipped, like, one below the other.
Yeah. I guess, yeah.
Basically, the main line
Minimized a lot.
backup
On a short line, there would still be movement.
Yeah, it's a 75-meter piece doubled up, so it's only ever been rigged as a kind of a short line. And yeah, it seems to. And I only have the screw pins. Never seem to find them unscrewing on the back.
Yeah. I mean, I guess the issue occurs after like a week of being rigged and only
Like
a short time in the world. But yeah.
The very big shackles, the steel ones, have that extra pin that you can just open, and it will never come undone. You can tape it as well.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was referring to, as opposed to the kingpin one.
Oh yeah.
But yeah,
they're heavy ass.
they're so heavy it's hard to recommend.
For a festival, that's what it was. Like, we just zip tied all of them.
Yeah,
Zip ties are another option. We did that at GGBY as well, but zip ties are even more annoying than tape. Like, you've got way more waste because
They
when I
make sure
just
nobody messes with them. Nobody can open it apart from somebody with cutters.
Yeah, and that pin can damage the webbing if it's stored on the same backpack. So you have to keep always those pin and shackles separately from all any soft material.
Yeah.
Or bring a nail file around. I mean, the other option is a triple auto-locking steel oval beaner. But again, that has the tent that could, load it on its side, whatever. It's
Yeah, exactly. That's one issue. And also we try to not use carabiners and festival rigs just to prevent people from, it's not always clear to beginners why you shouldn't, you could use a carabiner in the backup but not in the main, and what the issues are with carabiners. So try to to not use.
That's a very reasonable reason to not use it. Yeah.
It's just protecting the rig from the people that seems to be the biggest threat.